Today is UMW Sunday, and so it is also, we're starting something new here where the second Sunday of the month, the message will be brought by one of our lay speakers. And today, it's my turn. And since it was UMW Sunday and I'm the president, it kind of fell to me. But today's gospel lesson is one of the most familiar, I think, and probably most beloved in the Bible. We have all heard it many times, and it's been adopted by various missions and ministries because it speaks so directly to the way we're supposed to live. Kairos uses it, for instance, visiting those in prison. It's a kind of a no-brainer there. And so do food banks and clothing banks. It speaks to those groups and to people who were trying to help the least of these. But who are the least? Our UMW unit has been participating in a wonderful study on poverty. The study is wonderful, the poverty is not. It's heartbreaking. Right here in South Carolina, a child under the age of 1 dies every day from poverty-related issues. Poverty affects the education of our children. Our state has many health issues stemming from poverty, and guess what? They cost the taxpayers money. We see people standing on a street corner with a sign asking for food or money. Too many of us look away, not noticing that the person has on layers of clothing despite the temperature being so high that our car air conditioners are blasting away. But that's all the clothing that person owns, and he has no home to keep it in. So he wears it despite the heat. And he stands in 95-degree weather on a busy, hot intersection because he has no choice. I do hope none of you are reacting to this by thinking, oh, well, there's work out here to be done if he'd just do it, or he just wants money for wine. Well, maybe that is true for some. But are we the judge? Contributing causes to poverty are many, and yes, laziness is one. But more likely causes are lack of education, lack of opportunity, illness, whether mental or physical, family responsibilities that prevent work, lack of transportation to work. The list goes on. There are many reasons people can't work. I have a nephew, for instance. Some of y'all know a little bit about him. He has a bullet in his spine. He got it at work. He can't stay in one position for very long at a time. He has to be able to move around. He has to be able to stand up sometimes. Sometimes he has to be able to sit down or lie down. The bullet cannot be removed. He has days when his pain is such that he can hardly move. So his job options have been greatly limited. Yes, he has a degree. He's well educated. He writes a sports column on the internet, but he doesn't make a whole lot of money. So I would call him part of the working poor. Then there are those who have family responsibilities that keep them from regular work. Here I am. I'm one of them. We can manage pretty well without the little bit of a salary I made as a preschool teacher. Others aren't so fortunate. What are you supposed to do if you can't afford proper care for your family? It may be young children, and it may be old ladies like me. It really doesn't matter. You can't leave them alone, goodness knows. You can't hire someone to take care of them. That would kind of zero out your salary. The only other option is to dump them in a nursing home or in a daycare center. But again, that would eat your salary, so again, what's the point? And if things get really bad, your children may be taken away, or you may have to give them up voluntarily because you just don't have the means to care for them. The foster system has a lot of abuses, and not everyone ends up in a facility as good as our Epworth. If you aren't well educated, your job options are increasingly limited. So many positions that used to be filled by those with less education have either been transferred overseas for cheaper labor, we all know about that, or have been replaced by new technologies. And if you've lost your home somewhere in the shuffle, it gets worse. With no place to stay, you have no place to keep what belongings you have. Where can you bathe? Where can you wash your clothes? What address can you put on a job application or a bank account? If you're fortunate, you may find an Oliver Gospel mission. But then again, you could end up, like some people we have known, sleeping in the woods down here near Gills Creek. And that's just here. Our American poor, bad as their condition is, are better off than most of the poor in this world. All our lives we have heard about the terrible conditions in many places in Africa, for instance. We see these heartbreaking pictures of children in third world countries. Earthquakes and tsunamis level homes that weren't even adequate to begin with. 1 out of every 8 people in this world lack safe water. Nearly 5,000 children worldwide die every day from waterborne diseases. Diarrhea is the second leading cause of global disease, ahead of both heart disease and HIV/AIDS. And 443 million school days are lost every year to waterborne diseases. So the poor are still with us, just as Jesus said they would be. 2,000 years and we hadn't gotten a whole lot better. Why haven't we? Beats me. We're all guilty of turning our heads from the stranger at the back of the church, from zipping through the intersection to avoid meeting the eyes of the man standing there, of thinking, yeah, that woman has all those children, so she can get more welfare. But we need to rethink our actions. Part of the purpose of the UMW is to, quote, experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, unquote. How can we possibly achieve that if we don't love our neighbors? I remember the second verse in Hebrews 13. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. If we continue to turn our heads and close our checkbooks, we'll never see those angels or the angel that may be Christ himself. But we can't just write a check. While yes, that can help, depending on, of course, on where it's going, it's a short-term solution. We need to do better. We have to recognize our responsibility to help the least of these. Noblesse oblige may be fine for a king, but the last I noticed ain't none of us wearing a crown. We need to be willing to get our hands dirty and our clothes smelly if necessary. When you go visit a homeless shelter, are you standoffish? Would you rather not shake hands with those people because you don't know where that hand has been or what it's been up to? You don't want your children playing with those children over there because they might have head lice. And the toothless old man that drools in his wheelchair is just too gross for words, and he's looking at you funny. Those are the least of these. Those are the angels, and our supportive fellowship must include them. I'm glad to say that we invite our neighbors to gather food from our garden. We welcome children to play in our churchyard. We encourage the community to use this as a gathering place, a place to walk a dog or find a book. We invite children to come play games, sing songs, and learn about Jesus. We take services to nursing homes, and we scent the neighborhood with the smell of the best barbecue in town. But there's a lot more we can do. There's so many more to think about. After all, there is poverty from lack of money, and there is poverty from lack of humanity. Sometimes the poorest are those with plenty of money. Sometimes the poverty is of the spirit. This is just as tragic. And this passage from Matthew speaks of them also and reminds us to care for them. For how can one be in any kind of prison, physical or mental, and not feel a spirit of impoverishment? What landed him there? Yeah, crime was committed, but what led to that? Poverty of some type, no doubt. The mental and physical prisons darken our days and nights. The same is true for illness of any kind, whether it's physical or mental or emotional. There's something lacking that caused it, something that is missing. When the spirit is in poverty, physical poverty seems almost insignificant. How awful is it to get up every morning with no hope, no joy, no peace, no freedom, because how can we be free with those things lacking? Freedom as whole persons. How can that exist when life seems to have no light, when pain darkens every hour of existence? when grief weighs us down so much that we can hardly stand, much less walk. This church for many years ended each service by singing together a song called Love This World Through Me. Many of you remember it, I'm sure. Our own mission is to be the hands and feet of Christ to our community. If we are to entertain angels, to love our neighbors, to help the least of these, we have to take the light of Christ to them. We have to feed them both spiritually and physically. We need to nurture their bodies and their souls. We have to lighten the darkness. We can all be Christ to someone. We can take our lights and spread the fire. We can transform the world. The question is, will we?